I even remember there was this one particular day when the sole of my chappal had gone off.
Yeah. Chappal घिस गए चलते चलते.
Like literally in that filmy way. But it all happened, right?
Yeah.
It all happened, and it was hard. Like you gave up on all that comfort that you had in life, you remember.
But I think, like you're saying, your passion to solve it kept you going. What kept me going was knowing that I'm building something. Hi, welcome to Unscripted with Mohit and Malika. We are the husband-wife co-founder duo who built the Moms company. At Unscripted, we have, I think, off-the-cuff conversations on everything from entrepreneurship, building a brand, building trust, building a team in the hazy world of startups in India. Today's episode is Rewind, which I'm very excited to do. So we're going to focus deep on the first 2 years of the journey of building up a brand and building a company. In many conversations, I find it's the hardest to start and it's the hardest to get people to join you, especially in the first years when there's nothing to show for it. Right? So, Malika, first question to you. What inspired you to start, the brand before it was even called the Moms Company?
Yeah, we actually went through various cuts of calling it with very different names.
Different names.
Very different names. Ma something. There was this mother thing also.
Mother Nature.
No, not Mother Nature. It was something else.
Mother's Nature.
Yeah, Mother's Nature.
Yeah.
I a lot
bunch
of
of
the
names.
names. And then, of course, the name for the MomsCo came and we were like, I think this is it for us. But very personal journey. Got 2 daughters. I shared them with you. And so they both had skin conditions. And after moving back from London, there weren't too many options. And when I went to other moms to ask for saying what are the possible options that they have and the alternatives that they have moved through, nobody had a clear, distinctive answer. Like we've all grown up with being called babies of those famous brands,
Yeah.
and taking pride in the fact that you use the products. But it was shocking for me to realize that there was no such brand. And the idea to start the MomsCo was largely to build a brand that moms can truly trust, can use fearlessly without thinking about what ingredients have gone into it, what fragrance have gone into it, and just be extremely confident while using it on their products.
For me, it was completely different. I was working with Snapdeal at the time and I was seeing these trends of women discovering products on social media, which was just starting back in 2016, 17. Women being amazing customers for whom access much more than price was important online. Right? So I came from a space where when we spoke about the idea, I said, look, there's definitely a space where brands will get built on social media. E-commerce is coming to a space where you can create sales as a channel without having to go offline. So what really excited me was this ability to try and create a digital only or digital first brand. So very different take on it. But you had no background, right? You hadn't done cosmetology.
No.
So and also the more I thought about it, you were coming out of 5 years of spending time at home with kids, right? You had of course had a career before that. What gave you the confidence that this is it or this will work?
I'll come to it.
Okay.
I have a question for you actually.
Okay.
The question I have for you is that you spoke a lot about how you thought it was the right time because women were shopping online. How is it as a decision to move from your well-paying corporate job into the world of entrepreneurship? And was it a decision all taken by just your brain or was there heart involved as well?
I've been in an interesting space where all the way back from my childhood, I've had to, or I've wanted to start businesses. So when I was a kid in school, I had a library, right, where I would give books on rent. I made no money and lost all the books, but it started from there. Then when I moved to Bombay for my engineering, I started this side hustle of assembling computers because that was my dad's business. So I always had this kida, as you will, of starting a business, and leaving McKinsey to join Snapdeal was in service of let me at least understand the startup world. When you came up with the idea, I said, look, there is no better way to actually getting into entrepreneurship than actually doing it. And this was the best advice Kunal and Rohit from Snapdeal gave me as well. It was a very hard decision. I don't think we were confident at that time, but a few factors did give us peace of mind, right, to be able to start. I think the most important one, which I find holds young entrepreneurs back today, is if they actually have loans in the house. Right? We were in a very interesting space where we had bought houses with payments to be made. So we sold off those houses to get money, but we didn't have loans. Kids were still very young. So the actual cash outflow could be taken care of for a couple of years with what we had built. That gave me an incredible amount of confidence, right? Just that I wouldn't be struggling during the days of struggle. I wouldn't be struggling for payments at home.
Yeah.
So that gave me confidence to take the plunge, right? Beyond that, of course, you keep doing different things, but I think that is very core to starting.
I think it's very important. It's a very important point that you touched as well, right? Saying that it is important to have some sort of financial stability before you decide to plunge into entrepreneurship, because you can't be constantly thinking about money, and that can't be the only force that's playing on your mind constantly, because you will need some amount of financial stability, some amount of financial cushion to last you a couple of years while the business actually reaches to a stage where you can actually make a lot more money out of it. But I think it's not just that, right? Like, I think personally for me, if you see, even to know that you're ready to take a plunge, just one side of it is, of course, financial stability. But I think a couple of other factors that were really important was, whether you're in that space or whether you've learned the art of taking tough decisions. It's very important in the journey to be able to take tough decisions, because you'll be taking decisions in the absence of complete data available to you, at least when you start up, right? Like, once your company is slightly older, there's a lot of access to data that you have from all resources. But when you start up, you don't have it, right? So there's a lot of decisions that you're taking also on your own personal gut. What you feel about it and what you think. And, sometimes that can be very unnerving for people. And if you're ready to take those tough decisions, not all of them are going to work. Some of them are going to work, some of them are going to fail. But when you're in a space when you can take those decisions and you are ready to face the failure or the success that comes out of that decision, I think that's also very important for you to be in a state mentally to be able to do all of it.
How did you know, coming back to your starting? So one, when you started, how did you feel confident that this is going to succeed, or that I am ready for this, including taking tough decisions, financial stability, all of that, right? But how do you know?
So, I had nothing to lose, right? So I had taken a break of 5 years raising our 2 daughters. When we started, our older daughter was 4 and the younger one was 1. So honestly, I didn't have too much to lose. I could have gone back to my corporate job, but this seemed far more interesting than what I was doing initially. And more than that, for me, I think the decision to start was not that hard, because it was something that was keeping me up all night. I was worried about what I was using on my children. When I was asking people through late nights after children would go back to sleep, right, on the Facebook group saying, tell me what is it that you're using, I did not get a particularly straight answer from absolutely anybody. And that is when I thought that, and I often tell this to people as well, if there is an idea that's keeping you up at night, maybe it's truly worth losing your sleep over. So I was like, yes, let's just go ahead, and I'm anyways not getting any sleep without having these products, so might as well just go ahead, take the plunge and start creating them myself. And I think the tougher decision for me was not to decide to start up. The tougher decision was to actually hire you. Because what that essentially meant was, potential financial instability over the next couple of years. And which is where I think the decision we took was saying that, we've got enough savings to last us for 2 years if this business doesn't make us any money. But at the end of 2 years, if it doesn't do well, then at least one of us needs to go back to a corporate job to start fetching the money for monthly expenses. But yeah, it was tougher for me to actually hire you than take the plunge myself.
Very interesting. So for me, it was the opposite. For me, taking the plunge was easier because I knew that you were losing sleep over this, right? I had been roaming around, I think, for years trying to find what is that one idea that I sleep over that I want to dedicate my life to. And here, knowing that, hey, at least one of us is dedicating our life to it in terms of solving this problem was really interesting and gave me the confidence that this will work, right? I find this very often when people tell me, hey, I want to start a business. I don't know what to start. The biggest question I also ask them is this a problem, or is someone in your founding team losing sleep over this? Because it's one of the most critical things, right, to actually getting solved, to actually solving and creating a big company out of it.
You truly need to be passionate about what you're building.
Why is that? Why is passion such an important point for the first couple of years, right? How does it shape the business or the team?
I think it's really important for you to be passionate about what you're building, because when you start up, there are no set rules, right? There is this concept in your mind. There is a want and a strong desire to do something which exists in your mind. And you just can't translate it into anything physical for a large set of people, right? Like when we tried hiring our initial set of people, they'd not seen the products. They didn't know what the brand would be called, right? It was all there in our mind, our head. And I remember a lot of them just came through. If you remember the first few people whom we hired, they were like, spoke to you, I don't know what you will do, but you're truly running to build something, that you really want to do something, and I want to be a part of your journey. It wasn't as much that I'm joining the mom's company. It was about me joining your journey.
Yeah.
And if you're not passionate about something truly, I don't know how you will make those initial start, how you will make those initial hires, how you will make your first pitch deck, because there aren't financials to show. In a lot of cases, the physical product is also not available to show for a large set of people, right? So it's all what you feel about what you're looking to build, which actually translates to how passionate you're about it. Which is going to sort of automatically help you traverse the first few months, at least, if not years, of your journey into entrepreneurship. And I think that's one part of it, which is more for the outside world. The other part that I truly feel is that, it's an all-consuming journey. It's not easy, right? But it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun because it doesn't seem like work. It's very heavy work. You're heavy lifting all the time. I remember I went through a phase where I almost had decision fatigue, taking decisions every now and then. It takes toll on your personal health a lot of times. You're not available for a lot of events that you want to be. And it cannot just be work that makes all of this worth it.
Yeah.
It has to be something more, and that more comes from how passionate you're about solving that particularly one problem which you've identified that exists, for you to sort of put in all those hours of effort, put in those days, put in those nights, put in those, give up on all those parties that you could probably be a part of having fun, but just decide on just doing that. And that is why I think for these two primary reasons that passion is extremely important.
Yeah. I read a couple of very interesting quotes, right, on this. So as a startup, you're going against the grain, right? There is value to be created when you're doing something that other people think is not possible. So by default, you're starting at a very hard position, right? When you're doing something that's very hard and difficult and people think is not possible because you want to create value, in this case, starting a brand before D2C was a thing, right? When you want to do that, the only conviction that you can share with people is your intention and your passion. You can't share data, right? If the data existed, there's no value in the business anyway. Right? So if the only thing you can share is the intention, then that better be damn strong.
Yeah.
Right? You better have real passion for the problem that you're solving. Otherwise, you won't be able to convince everyone you spoke about, your teams, your suppliers, and so on.
Yeah, I remember how many people mentioned to us initially saying that, are you picking up a fight with the big FMCG?
Yeah, it's never been done before. Everyone who's tried this has failed. Ye dekho, the whole list of brands who've tried in the mom and baby space. And every conversation we would hear the same thing, right? This is just not possible.
Yeah. Like you can't do this. You've got big daddies there with big pockets.
Yeah.
And I remember at that point of time only, like people kept saying that they've got big daddies there with big pockets. They're going to like completely kill you. And my reaction to that was only that they don't have the passion that I have to sort of solve for it. Right? Like I truly want to do this for it. I don't care if it doesn't really become really big, but as long as there is a decent set of people who start using the product and it makes a difference to their lives, I would have succeeded in my attempt of doing that. And I think that's where the journey started from.
Yeah. And for me, building that conviction was very important early on. Right? So those 200 moms that we spoke to, where, like, just to rewind, right? When you came up with this idea, I thought you're coming up with the idea because you're tired of getting suitcases full of stuff from outside India, right? Everything from diapers to food, etc. For baby would come outside India, and shoes and clothes and food and yogurt, which people would keep in the aeroplane during travel so it doesn't get bad. We've done all of that.
Yeah.
I just thought this is the story of an obsessive mom, right? And then we started speaking to mothers, and every time we spoke to a mother, she would come back and said, oh, I import this, I import that, or if I don't import, then I pay 4 times the price in the local import shop. Right? So all of those questions and those women gave me validation. So then you're at this interesting point where you're saying, the world is telling me this isn't possible, but my actual users and consumers who I want to talk to are saying this is a dire need. And so there must be something here. And I think that was the starting point.
Yeah. For me, I think it was a lot of stories that we heard during the time of our market research. If you remember, just before launching and when we were kind of creating this idea of what was the company going to be, what is it going to stand for, what would be the name of the company. We did this lot of market research and met those 200 moms that we did.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember a few of them who were so clear of what they wanted, and it was so different for everybody else, right? Because my big takeaway was pregnancy and baby is one segment where people are ready to invest.
Yeah.
It's one segment where fundamentally something changes in the life of the woman when she's becoming a mother.
Yeah.
And it opens her mind to a lot of newer products, a lot of newer conversations. And a brand that can create sort of a relationship with the woman at that point of time would definitely be a brand that would stay on for long.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, a large part of what we drew and as an inference from all those market researches that we did.
Yeah. So let's say we've done this, right? We're at a space now where, and let's say for other business builders and entrepreneurs starting off, they're at a stage where they've done this research. There is a story or there is a need which they feel passionate about and they want to create a business around it. They've spoken to potential consumers. Everyone is saying, hey, please solve this, right? You put a solution out in the market. In our case, we launched with pregnancy first, right? How did you know that you had product market fit when you launched?
So we didn't actually, right? Like that's where I said, right? There has to be times when you take those tough decisions. A lot of it would be based on gut. So if you remember, at that point of time when we started, there was a stretch mark oil that existed as a pregnancy solution in the market completely, correct? And I said no. It's not just stretch marks that people are worried about, but I think the real pain is also in the dryness and the itchiness that comes along with pregnancy, right? And we need something to sort of help with that as well. And which is where we invented on our stretch mark bundle, for instance, right? It is an innovative product. It was innovation from a perspective of there wasn't anything new created in it, right? It was at the end of the day, it was a body butter and an oil at the end of the day. But what it did was it brought the two together to solve for a particular need that was unsolved for. That kind of got traction for people. I constantly thought that, there could be pregnancy products that are existing, but there were no pregnancy gifts. So we curated a gift box, which could become like a pregnancy gift box, which could be gifted to a large set of people because we wanted to be online first, which meant, gifting is important. You want to send gifts to your friends. So I think a large part of it was use cases that we created and we thought of, and I thought like probably, these are the cases in which we can enter the lives of people and create those moments for ourselves and then drive adoption. It wasn't about selling that one stretch oil or selling that one body wash. It was about how do you create a connect with the consumer through that little marketing spend that we had, right?
Yeah.
And then sort of build on that. So the first set of products, if you remember, that got sold were exactly these two that got sold. The box became a point of conversation because gifting was an option that did not exist for a lot of people. I still remember stories where people came back saying that, my sister is gifting this box to another friend of hers. And the eyes with which she was looking at the box while she's pregnant herself, the brother called us and said that I want to gift it to her as well, right?
Yes.
These were those moments that got created, and through the course while all of it was happening was where conviction kept getting built, right?
I think it's a really interesting loop, right? So you launch something, right? In our case, let's say the pregnancy gift box. So you launch the pregnancy gift box, it sells a little bit, you start talking to those consumers, and those consumers are coming back and gushing or saying, I desperately want this and so on. So that gives you more conviction that, hey, this product is working. And at some point of time, that iteration gets you to a point where the product starts growing organically, right? It starts growing by itself and women are talking to each other about it. And then you say, okay, now I know I have product market fit, right? So to me, it was that point of continuously iterating and getting to a point where people are sharing the product with other people that define product market fit.
Yeah.
I remember this happened for us in a lot on Facebook groups at the time.
And there was a lot that happened into it. One was, of course, the format in which we launched the product. The second was the amount of play we did with the pricing on the product.
Say more on the pricing.
If you remember, if you go back in time, we launched it at a particular price. Then we brought the price down. Then we played a little bit on discounts to figure out what is the sweet point at which the product will really sell. And then eventually the new price got defined for the product.
Yeah.
You know, and so it was not just an innovation in terms of a product being created, but it was also, then we checked on the pricing for it. And while all of it was happening, there was a team where it was actually no team. It was just you, me, and two other people
who packing boxes with us.
Constantly kept calling the customers to seek feedback about, you know, how they're liking the products, whether it's not working for them, what's working for them, are they liking the fragrance and not liking the fragrance. And all of it is, of course, before launching the product, the amount of testing we had done on the product, not just, you know, from a whole perspective of testing labs, but also with women to get to know their feedback. I still remember we had multiple choices and we were split with what fragrance we should go ahead with, where the women actually chose a very non-conventional fragrance for it. Like I had like a very nice vanilla fragrance, a lavender fragrance, and I went with a mango fragrance, and eventually what got picked was the mango fragrance. You know, and it was unbelievable for me because I think for me, I thought that was very low down the hierarchy of choice. But it was just that every woman chose it, and at that point of time, it didn't matter what I wanted to do. I got very clear signs from all consumers saying that this is my preferred choice. And that is when, again, as I said, right, like my gut might be saying something, but the data said something else at that point of time. So I decided to go ahead with mango. And surprisingly, once we launched, the one thing that got spoken about it, the maximum, was how it smells and how it feels.
Yeah,
right?
It really took off then.
It really took off then. So I think it just taught us the importance of seeking consumer or customer feedback or audience feedback, actually, you know, before launching the product. So I think there was a lot that went into it. There was a pre-launch phase of getting feedback and validation. It was a post-launch product feedback. Then there was a pricing feedback. There was a packaging feedback. There was a lot that went into it to actually find the right product market fit. It was an iterative process. It wasn't the first go that we got all of it right, but it did happen. The only thing I think that was very important was, I don't think anyone from outside would have realized this, but the reason they did not realize it because we were very quick. We were very quick to reacting to whatever people were saying at that point in time. And the speed with which you react and correct the product is extremely important while you're doing your startup, because you can't put your money on a product which is not going to take off.
Yeah. I think there's a fine balance though, right? So finding product market fit is this amazing iterative process of getting to a product that people speak about organically, and that word of mouth helps it grow. How did you deal with when women came back to you with very different feedback on the product? I'm sure that happened, right? I remember a few cases. So you launched this butter with this fragrance. Some love it, some hate it, right? How do you deal with that? How do you know which direction to go in?
And then I took my decision. then I went there with a choice that I liked more. Because I'm also a user of the brand, right? So then I just said, okay, fine, I feel more for this particular fragrance and that particular fragrance, so I will just go ahead with that one. So if there was a split choice, or even if there was a closed choice, I would bring in my own perspective to it to decide on what I like better.
Yeah.
It's all about taking tough decisions.
It's all about taking tough decisions.
And bold ones.
Tough, bold decisions and iterating like crazy in the first 2 years.
Yes.
How did your team deal with this? Like, iterating is not easy. And you're a small team, you're 4 people. I think in the first 2 years, we still had maybe 8-10 people on the team, right? We didn't really grow the team a lot during that time.
Yeah.
How do you take the team along?
I think we built a really fun environment. I think, you know, I would love going to work, and we got everyone who would love coming to work as well. I think the culture that was in the organization was, like, till date, everyone still tells me that thing about the MomsCo was that it just felt like coming home, you know, from another home. It never felt like coming to work. We worked very hard, we worked like crazy, but we also had our own share of fun. We had our own share of laughter. The office was always vibrant, full of energy, very young folks in the organization, getting trained, getting built, growing very rapidly within the organization. I remember there was cheers on one side, there was been, laughter on the other. There's been also been music constantly playing in the office at any given point of time. So I think we were just a very fun place to work in, where people did not mind putting in those, hours and days of work to make it work.
For me, it actually went back to the passion point, right? So we were very clear this was a need for moms that needed to get solved. No one was solving it. And everyone we hired at that time joined, just like you said, because, hey, I don't know what's there, but I feel for what you're saying and I want to join you. And so the first 8-10 people that you hire for the cause. And when you come to office knowing that you're almost this entire small team fighting for a cause against the world, it can be very hardworking but very inspiring at the same time. I love that phase. Like, to me, if I could do 0 to 1, I would do 0 to 1 all day. Right? Just getting people go fight battles on a daily basis. That is super energizing for a lot of people. You have to make sure you find those people.
Yeah. Actually, it takes me back to a moment when the first time we actually saw the physical product land up in our hands.
I have goosebumps, as you say.
Yes.
See?
Yes. And I always remember you always had that feeling when you saw the product for the first time.
Yeah.
Talk about it.
Yeah. If I go back to my childhood, and then I had a coaching session at some point of time, and someone asked me, what are those moments in your childhood that you were happiest? And I would always go back to say when I was sitting and making my Lego, or I was sitting and I had this mechanics game and I was making that. And it was a very interesting conversation when he came back and said, you're a builder, right? The moment you build things, it gives you energy. And then I went through my career and said the happiest moments in my career, and all of them were around I'm creating something, building something, doing the 0 to 1. To me, that's what the first product meant. Like, I looked at that product, again, I have goosebumps. And I think this brand, this product, this formulation wouldn't exist in the world if we didn't do it.
Nice.
That to me is an incredible source of inspiration, right? And the more we did that, the more I got inspired by, hey, this is something really meaningful that's making a difference to somebody.
Yeah.
What were your first moments of joy in the first 2 years?
I think a lot of it was just customer feedbacks for me. I think it was that, and I personally drive a lot of energy from the amount of learning that I'm having. And I think it was a journey where I was constantly learning, unlearning, relearning, and learning something new all the time. So for me, I think the most energizing part was about how much I learned in not just those 2 years, but throughout the journey of building the MomsCo, right? Like, you learn things you've never heard about, right? And this is a learning which you can't have in any classroom. It cannot, it was not in that, marketing was not what was mentioned in that Kotler's book.
Yeah. You're like,
Right?
marketing is very different.
I think the only things I remember was the triangle of, from awareness all the way to repeat.
Yeah.
And the other was your 4 Ps.
Yeah,
Which
correct.
came in, right? Other than that, there was absolutely nothing that was, that I remember
Everything was learned.
using out of it,
Yeah.
right? And I did actually go back to the Kotler's book when I was thinking of doing
Yes.
marketing. But the real life learning of building something was something that kept me energized all the time. Like, that was my source of energy.
Yeah. What do you think were the 2 or 3 factors for which you would attribute success in the first 2 years? Right? So you've done nothing, you've then started a brand, and this is sort of pregnancy phase. You just started 4 products, launching something, getting some traction, right? How did you know this was going to be a success? So what would you define as success at that time?
So, I remember meeting this particular investor. He was one of my angel investors, also the mentor in the organization, Nandu, actually. And Nandu actually said that he met us on one particular day, and he said that I will meet you here in about 3 months' time, and this would be the revenue of your company. And both you and I looked at each other, and we literally thought, I don't know what is he smoking today, that that he thinks this is what is going to be met as a number, right? It was a steep number, and it just got met, and it met because and he'd also said it not pre-launch, he'd said it post-launch after seeing the initial traction, right?
Yeah.
So and this was also like some time into the company, and I think when that number got achieved, it gave me the confidence that there is no other number as unachievable.
So, you're a first time entrepreneur, you're just starting this, you launched a brand, right? What goes into that success in the first 2 years, right? You're going against the grain, people are all trying to tell you this isn't possible.
Yeah.
What helped you succeed?
I think I'm a very resilient person by nature. I don't give up very easily. And the amount of people who kept saying no to me, it just kept encouraging me to prove them all wrong. So I think for me, a large part of the first 6 months was trying to prove people wrong by saying, no, this is doable, because there was enough that I had worked on in the background to figure that yes, there was truly a market for it, right? You may not believe it now, but you will see it later. Like, no, there was a segment for beauty, there was a segment for baby.
Yeah.
There was no segment called mom and baby.
Correct.
And we literally created that segment, mom and baby. And I just felt very strongly for that. So I think a large part of it was, for me, creating those small wins that would make the journey worth it and kind of keep telling me that I was on the right track. So, I would create short-term goals for myself and like long-term goals for myself, achievement milestones, short-term and long-term. And the fact that I kept meeting, and of course did not meet a lot more as well, but the fact that, out of those 10 goals, 8 to 9 were met and sometimes 7 to 6 were met, was enough of a motivation to keep going on for me.
Yeah.
And I think while you go on, as they say, like if you're truly passionate about something, the whole kainat will come together to make it happen for you. It may sound as filmy as possible, but it's true, it does happen that way, right? So,
but I think there's more to it. The kainat helping you, to me, and if I replay, a lot of it happened because you had such strong conviction in what you wanted to do and conviction of purpose that it translated into the relationships you built. And I go back and I think about how did you convince that supplier to work with you, and it was purely on the basis of relationship.
And it was just showing up. Like the relationships got built later. The first part was getting them to open the door to let you in.
Yeah.
Right? Like there was a large part of it where people wouldn't let you in. And they were like, no, I don't want to work with you. Your MOQs are not going to work. You will never be able to afford me for me to do, for me to do the job for you.
Yeah.
Right? And a large part of it was just showing up every single day on their door, and then one fine day they're saying ki roz aa jati ho.
Roz aa jate.
And I was like kya kar rahe ho? And like, where are you coming from? She's like, and I remember once this guy told me saying that you've got 2 chota bachas in your house.
Roz chhod ke aa jate ho.
And you leave them every day, and then you travel all the way from Gurgaon to Noida.
Yeah.
Every single day to meet me.
Yeah.
Right? And then I think she said, I'll just call you inside for respect of it all, of you showing up every day. And that was my first entry. And that entry allowed me to build the relationship. Correct. Right? And then, of course, it became easier. Like by nature, I am a kind of person who can build strong relationships with people, right? I truly care about what I'm doing. So that was easy. The harder part was just getting the people to open the doors and let you in. Like the amount of times, and from the backgrounds that we come, honestly, right? Like, we're very privileged.
Yeah.
We've always been very comfortable. Now
We've never had to beat down doors for anything.
No, we had to, but may not be the way this was. Like manufacturing as a segment is completely different, right? Like we've had our own share of struggles initially as well. But the point was, here is where you're knocking on a door and the guard doesn't let you in.
Yeah.
Leave aside wanting to meet people, right? Like we've all gone from backgrounds and work cultures where your card would give you the entry inside anyone's office. And here I'm standing outside and the guard says, Madam, aap andar nahi ja sakte, right? Yeah. So how do you kind of cross all these obstacles to actually make an entry and have that first conversation with someone and then convince them to kind of, come together with you to try and build something? That I think is a very hard part. It was one of my small goals to meet, in one of those short-term goals to meet, to convince the person to work with you. And then, as that
get entry into the factory, his short-term goal.
Get entry into the factory, like have a conversation with Padakji.
Yeah. Those were very interesting times.
Yes.
Yeah.
It was very interesting times. You went from a space where, you were constantly whining and dining in like really fancy restaurants, and then moving to a stage where you getting super excited, I remember, about a Starbucks washroom.
Yeah.
because you didn't have access to a good washroom in the facilities that you were initially going and visiting, and you were constantly on the road. The amount of time you spent on the road, the amount of times we've just stopped the car by the side to eat food by the side on the road.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just insane. It was just
Yeah.
insane. I even remember there was this one particular day when the sole of my chappal had gone off.
Yeah. Chappal घिस गए चलते चलते.
like literally in that filmy way, but it all happened, right? It all happened, and it was hard. Like, you gave up on all that comfort that you had in life. You remember? I'm sure it must be very hard for you as well, right? Because McKinsey was spoiled with Oryx, who would be there downstairs before you even stepped down.
Yeah, so it was hard, but I think, like you're saying, your passion to solve it kept you going. What kept me going was knowing that I'm building something.
Yeah.
Right? I would go back to, hey, oh my god, this wouldn't exist if we didn't do it, right, on a down moment. Or I would go back to remember that customer conversation and how we made a difference to her life, right? Those were the stories that really kept you going during the tough times. And I think you need to create and celebrate enough of those moments, especially in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
What are the biggest mistakes you made?
So, I'm sure there were lots. A few of them that I distinctly remember is, I think a lot of it is actually around people, right? Where I think we hired based on whom, a lot of times initially on, we hired based on who we thought would fit the culture the most, right? I think I could have gone a little more aggressive in that by saying who was really needed, and then try and figure out how we sort of imbibe him or her in the culture of the organization. I think the second was around the fact that we had some brilliant people who worked along with us and helped us build the MomsCo. And the hardest journey that an entrepreneur has to take is that as the size of the organization increases, you kind of have to get more minds and more brains into the organization, and sometimes more senior talent.
Yeah.
I don't think I learnt the art very effectively very initially on how do you introduce a boss over someone who's been seen as a boss at that point of time, right? If someone seemed as heading operations at any given point of time, and then you kind of got an operations head on top of him, then they were like, okay, I don't have a role here.
Yeah.
You know, I really wish it was a scenario where this person knew what they were doing and their roles were crafted out well before a person came, you know, slightly more higher up in the hierarchy for that person, right? So that there was comfort and we did not lose these people, because I think when they left and the senior guy had come, there was again relearning that had to happen, and we did lose time in it. I really wish, and I hope when I do it the next time around, I make sure that we kind of retain all those people through the journey of while even senior folks keep joining in. Yeah.
But even as you speak about it, it's a very hard balance, because
it's very hard.
When you're starting up in the first 2 years especially, people are joining you for the passion and because they're driven to make a change.
Yeah.
Right? Given how driven people are, the minute you give them a boss, many of them are saying, hey, this is not what I signed up for. Right? And so some of them will choose to move out. But in some cases, hopefully, if you're very fast growing as a startup, you can create new opportunities for them.
Yeah.
Right? I think what I would change, and on that front, what we didn't do well, is have this open conversation.
Yeah.
Right? Because I think we let the dice fall in a sense, right? So when you're having the conversation, we say, hey, you choose, right? This is happening, your choice whether you stay or no. If you choose, we'll give you something interesting. Rather than saying, which we learned over time, in the next 6 months, in the next 12 months, here's what's going to happen. Here's what I would love you to do. Let's create a role that's exciting for you.
Yeah. I think we learned it like slightly later
Yeah.
in the journey. If we would have learned it before, we would have still kept a lot of really good folks in the organization.
Yeah.
What were your 3 things that you regret?
Actually, it's interesting you say 3. I learned the power of 3. The power of 3 is everything in a startup takes 3 times as long as you think it's going to take and cost you 3 times as much as you think it's going to cost. Because you go into this world with, hey, everything's going to happen in a few thousand rupees, and then you suddenly realize everything's going to take lakhs. And then product development, as an example, it's a 3-month cycle if you do it well, but you suddenly realize, hey, I'm a startup, new kid on the block, I don't get the priority I should or I would otherwise, and so that 3 months quickly becomes 9 months.
Yeah.
Right? So in a sense, especially in the first 2 years, it feels like there's a lot of chappal khis rahe hain. There's a lot of I'm trying to get stuff done, but very little actually happens, right? And you need to be impatient, but you also need to be okay with it because it just good things take time.
Yeah.
What would you do differently next time, or what advice would you give young founders in their 0 to 2 journeys?
The advice I would give to young,
0 to 2, like you're just starting off.
yeah, just starting off. So I think don't give up on your idea very quickly. Constantly keep checking on the product, which is very important, and keep getting to the right product market fit, but don't give up on your idea very quickly. Surround yourself with people, and two kinds of people actually. One who would help you take those really tough decisions, who can guide you through taking those decisions. At the same point of time, with also people who will lift you up on those inevitably available days where you will feel really low, where there would have been a lot of failure that you would have faced, where there would be rejection that you would have faced, right? So definitely surround yourself with both these sets of people, mentors, friends, family on the other side. And third, build a really strong team. I think we tend to underestimate the power of people. And I think it's the lowest cost and the lowest investment that you can make in your organization, right? Why I say people is that don't try and waste time in finding all the answers yourself. If there is someone who has already gone through that part and they know how to build something, right, just hire that person and just cut short the time.
Yeah.
Right, so which is where people become really important. You would spend a lot of time trying to figure out the right answer, but if you have someone in front of you who's done it before, can give you an immediate answer at that, the speed at which you can move will be really, really fast, right? And you will see value of that person in the output in terms of a revenue or a quick execution or ease of working, but you cannot commensurate it with money at the time of hiring at that point of time. So these three things: invest in people, surround yourself with mentors and friends and family who can really strong support system around you, and third, don't give up on your idea very quickly. Keep iterating on the product till you get the right product market fit.
All right.
What are your 3 things?
My 3 things. Actually, I have 2. So 2 things I think stand out for me for young entrepreneurs in 0 to 2 sort of journey. First is find your true reason to build something. Right, so like you said, for you the idea was about solving this for moms, but for me it was I'm building something. And that intent of building kept me going. That's what I was passionate about, right? So I think it's very hard to be passionate about a very broad sector or a very broad trend like social media, right? You have to be passionate about some cause which you define as a cause for others, because that's what gets everything going. So find that cause for you or the idea, and then iterate around that very quickly. That's really important. Second mistake I often see entrepreneurs make is once they've identified the cause, they think they're a soldier in a battle. Right? They're fighting a one-man army. It's me against the world. I have to solve this. But your job is to be a coach and to surround yourself, like you said, with mentors, advisors, suppliers, partners, and so on, who you can get to believe in your cause, because there's massive power. No single person can actually make a very, very large change. Right? Single people make change when they inspire other people to join the cause. So find out the cause, learn to communicate it in a way that you actually build this army of yours. And if you can do those 2 things, then the rest will happen. Then you will iterate, then you will get more people to join your journey. You'll find product market fit, you'll find scale. But definitely get these 2.
Mohit, did you ever think that you were getting rejected, not your idea?
Yeah.
The fact that you were getting rejected, and did it kind of pull you down?
Yeah.
Or make you self-doubt yourself or doubt what you were doing or building?
No, you always start with the big bang, right? We started with, hey, we're going to change the world. Right? We're going to create the new way of creating FMCG companies in the country. And suddenly when you start going out to fundraise or you're meeting suppliers, you realize you're not even in their mind space, right? That to me was hard, especially because my entire identity at that point of time was built around, I've done amazing things in life. I did McKinsey, I did Snapdeal, I did IIM Ahmedabad. I have a brilliant idea. Everyone should be ready to jump onto my bandwagon. right? That's how I went into the world, and so the first few rejections were very hard. It took a lot of time to actually, maybe it took the entire time of building the MomsCo over the next 3-4 years for me to actually come to the realization that it's not a rejection of me individually, it's a rejection at that moment of the idea that I have, right? And to get to that point, I think I had to get to a point in my own life where I was rejecting others' ideas, right? As the team grew, I wasn't impressed with everything, right? As our partners grew, I was saying, hey, no to partners, right? So I think that made a difference. What rejections hit hardest?
So there actually were a lot of them that hit really hard, right? The fact that, you come from backgrounds where I've never been judged for being a woman, right? And then walking into the office of a manufacturer where he's like, आपके साथ कोई आया है जो paper sign करेगा? I was like, for what? And he's like, the paper कौन sign करेगा? Agreement का. So, I was sort of saying that, hey, I'll sign it. Whom do you need to sign? Right?
So
like, I have the signing authority, I'll sign it. So, that was odd.
Yeah.
I didn't feel rejected because it took me some time to understand that they were looking for a male counterpart to come and do all of that with me. There were moments where I walked into people's office and people have been like, everybody thinks they can run a startup these days. It's a new fashionable thing to do.
Yeah.
Like literally that, like a new fashionable thing to do. And there were of course like lots more where people rejected the idea, people rejected the product.
Yeah.
Suppliers refused to give you products. We had to buy our ingredients to start doing the first set of few formulations because no one would supply it to you, right?
Yeah. And for context, that's unheard of because every raw material supplier gives tons of samples to everybody because hopefully it gives them business.
So to be fair, they did, but we took so long to formulate the right product we liked that they thought that we were sort of doing a side business with the ingredients that we sourced from them. But, so there was all of these moments of rejection.
Yeah.
And as I said, right, like, what kept me going at that point of time was that while there was this one part of me which was dealing with the end of manufacturing and the set of operations, there was also this whole other set where I was working with this agency to craft out the narrative for the brand. I was working with this agency which was working on the design of the packaging. You had a bad day at the operation on the plants, but when you came back and you saw that one label design, you were like, okay, now one step closer to what I want to build, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of these rejections got offset when you came to this part of it, where there was another part doing and building something else, right? So for me, I practically in the initial few years created, and this is when the company had not launched, the first product is not launched, right? After the product got launched, at least people had a website to go and visit and see what you were doing and then take their own calls. But this is not before that. So I actually created 2 work worlds for myself. One was this whole world of back-end manufacturing, and one was this world of marketing and building the brand and building the conversation. And you had a rough day here and a good day there and a rough day here and a good day there. But these 2 worlds kind of helped me stabilize and kept me going. What was the hardest day that you remember in the first year?
The hardest day in the first year? When team members didn't join. Right? I remember we had done 2-3 offers in the first year. These were people we desperately needed because we were growing quickly and we wanted to just ramp up the team quickly. And we were working out of a small house and people would show up to the door and say, hey, first day in office, sorry, I'm not coming in, and walk away. In those moments, you feel like, hey, all of my conviction and passion and all that doesn't matter, right? People still won't enter the office.
Yeah.
In hindsight, it was good because those guys wouldn't have lasted. But yeah, in those moments, they were very hard.
Yeah.
What was your toughest day in the first 2 years?
The toughest day personally for me was when we were working on this product. And it was almost a very long period for which I was working on the product. I was going every single day to Noida to get this product fixed. And it was one fine day that the product was up to my liking and it got approved by everybody else. And when we did the pricing for it, it was just so off that we thought that this was impossible and we had to again go back to the drawing board to reinvent and start recreating the product. I still remember I was driving back and it was really late at night at that point of time. And I was driving back and I just felt so broken at that point of time that I remember calling you from the way saying that, I just feel like the world's come crashing down at this point of time because it was just too long. It had to get launched because everybody was asking for that product and all of that, right? And it just sort of felt like, oh my god, I have to go back to the drawing board to start this all over again. Sort of go back to tell the investors saying that it's not going to launch right now, it's going to launch later. And go back and tell the team saying, please stop and halt all your marketing promotions because this is not going to come in time. It looks like it's running delayed, right? And I know that was really hard for me. The drive back was extremely hard. And, also short-lived, which was great because I still distinctly remember that when I was driving back and I was having this conversation with you, there was this constant phone call that kept coming on the customer care number whose escalation was me and then you. And then I said, okay, I don't know who's trying to call so desperately at 9:30 at night. Let me just pick up the call. And I picked up the call and this person on the other side actually said, saying that, my bhabhi from Dubai just announced that she's pregnant. I'm flying to Dubai tomorrow morning. And the only thing she's asked for is one of your boxes. So is there any way that I can get that box, right? And there was this instant switch in the emotion at that point of time where it went from feeling rejected, really low, to this super high that you got, like almost like an adrenaline rush, saying that, okay, maybe it was a tough day, but I think it's all worth it because it's there, right? And it was just back to back on that one call and one drive back from work. So I think that for me was
your worst day and also your best day at the same time.
I think it's the most memorable day, and I think it's memorable. We did have a lot of phone calls like those even going forward, right? But that phone call was, I think, that one particular moment which I think I was almost very close to giving up on that particular day. And that phone call did not let me give up. So, which is the reason why I distinctly remember that one call, because you're going in this phase of mind where it's not worth it. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I've got 2 kids staying at home. One of them was sick on that particular day. And it did not work out. And then, when you go back and then you're like, okay, and then this customer called and it's like, all right, maybe it's not all that bad. Yeah.
Those are some of my favorite moments as well. I remember getting this email from a woman in Cochin, right? I know you remember this, where she sends an email saying, I am lying, giving birth to my baby in the OT. And the nurse is looking at my belly and she says, you have no stretch marks. How did this even happen? And while giving birth, I'm discussing the mom's company, right? And then someone sharing that story with us, to me, was just incredible
and she almost
intimacy, right? That she allowed us into her world in that way and to share that emotion with us.
And shared that with us actually with a little note almost 4 days after her baby was born. Which was very cool, But they're one of the first few. I think the first few customers and the first few stories are the ones that just keep you going. And that's something that you remember for life. Yeah. I think one advice I would love to give everybody is that please maintain a book.
Yeah, keep this.
Please keep a book.
Keep these books.
Like, we do a lot of these kids' books and children's book to keep children's memories. I think you must sort of keep a book to keep all the memories of your entrepreneurial journey as well. I think it'll very well help you write a book yourself. If not anything else at that point of time. But
and also inspire people, right? Like a lot of what we do now is this. Right? One of our reasons for doing Unscripted is so that all the new team members who join the MomsCo, we can take them back to those stories because those stories are powerful. They remind you why you exist and why you started this.
And I think it's a lot of motivation as well because you have this wall in your office. Which
that's my favorite wall.
Your wall which talks about a first office, a second office, a third office, a fourth office, and it shows how the offices have changed. So anyone who joins and comes to the current office, they would just go and see the wall and says, really? This is where you started? Oh, how nice is that? And this sense, and they feel an instant sense of pride on being a part of this journey. And I think that's really important for anyone who joins.
That's my pick-me-up wall. I use that wall of, hey, here's where we started from and here's how we've grown. As an example of, when it's not a fun day, you realize it's all worth it.
I think a lot of people, I think maybe it's good to have a pick-me-up wall, right? Because we saw this another wall in another company right now very recently where they had this world map. And they wanted to go to different places in the map, and they were actually putting up strings from India to all the locations where they'd actually launched. Right, and that wall overlooks the entire team the way they sit, right? So you constantly know how far you have reached,
and how much more there is to go,
and how much more there is to go, right? So I think I think it's beautiful to create a
Yeah.
wall in your company which kind of gives you the sense of where were we, how far we have got, and how far more we have to go.
Yeah, that's our hot tip for the day.
Yes.
Right? Start a pick me up wall.
Have the
Right?
pick me
That
up
shows
wall.
how far you've come and how far you have to go.
Yes. Lovely. On that note, let's
Okay.
wrap the episode.
This is fun.
Yeah.
I'm glad we did this. Okay.
So these are our 2 bits about starting up the initial journey. But if there's anything we have missed and you would like us to talk about it, please leave them in the comment sections below and we'll be very happy to answer them or pick them up in our next conversation. Stay tuned and don't forget to like, share and subscribe to
Unscripted.
to Unscripted with Malika and Mohit.
Thank you. See you soon.